spread a little aloha around the world at breakfast with Bob.
Thank you so much, Poncho Man. Welcome back to Breakfast with Bob, our not quite Kona edition. My name is Bob Babbitt. We're brought to you by Master Spas. As fuels go longer, Hoka Let's Fly, Form Smart Swim Goggles, DeBoer Wetsuits, Quintana Roo, Zoot, the original triathlon brand, Premium Plus Sports, and of course, our Challenged Athletes Foundation. In our first 30 years, we've now raised $159 million and sent out over 44,000 grants to challenged athletes in all 50 states, 73 countries, and of course, 105 different sports. Our next guest, only one of the greatest endurance athletes on the planet. She's a two-time 70.3 world champion, 2020 Olympic silver medalist in the mixed relay, two-time junior world champion, under 23 world champion, just finished up qualifying for her second Olympic team and was fourth in her first ever Ironman world championship. Taylor Knibb joins us. Taylor, how you doing?
I'm well, Bob. How are you?
I am spectacular. We came off of Kona week and came right home for our 30th anniversary of CAF and raised about $5.3 million that weekend. So it was a pretty good week.
Well, awesome. Wow.
It was pretty awesome. It was pretty awesome. Speaking of awesome, so you go to Kona, you've never run a marathon, you've never done an Ironman, and you go out and you push it all day long, end up in fourth place for a big chunk of that day. You're second. What do you take away from that experience?
Well, I think I was doing an interview the day after the race with Ironman, and I was explaining it like that I really had a rosy view of the race. And I think Matt Lieto was like, I don't think I've ever heard anyone has a rosy view of an Ironman. But I think at the end of the day, like you said I was pushing it all day, but I really I had to be in control because I didn't have like a perfect training block. I barely had a training block specific for the race. And so I kind of knew I just need to get to the finish line and the cards will fall how they fall. So I didn't feel like I could push. I just had to be careful and execute what I could do. And then I still fell apart. So I don't think I could say I ran a marathon yet because I walked. So that's there's still a lot of room for improvement. So I think taking away from the day, it's I really enjoyed the experience. Both the race itself is amazing, but also the week. I didn't understand that beforehand. And then I'm excited to go back, hopefully. So those are my takeaways.
Are you already, because you won your second 70.3 worlds, does that qualify you for next year in Nice as well?
It qualifies me for Nice, but now Ironman's brought back their validation thing. So the 4 ways I think I can validate, if I'm reading the thing correctly, is do an Ironman, do 2 70.3s, win gold in Paris, or get a wild card invitation. So I think at the end of the day, it might be harder for me to actually get to Nice having qualified via 70.3 worlds, because if I hadn't qualified, it would be I think it would be easier for Ironman to justify an invitation, but with their validation rule, and they want to make sure Lucy and Laura validate as well as the defending champions like Chelsea and Daniela. So it's kind of it's probably tougher, but I don't know. So we'll see. I still have no idea what my schedule will be next year, except for July 31st. So one race, 8 a.m. and then otherwise I don't know.
The other stuff doesn't really matter. But you also this year would you get fourth in the National Time Trial Championship? So is the goal next year Olympics in both sports?
I don't know at this point. So I've started working with a new coach, and I asked the coach, do you think it's completely unreasonable to go for this? And he was saying oh, well, I can't really say because we don't have enough data. Number one, I don't have any CDA data. And number two, he doesn't know how I respond to training quite yet. So he's so I can't say no yet, but I'm well, I kind of a yes or a no. Is this worth pursuing? Because so USA Cycling for the time trials next year, the winner of the Elite Time Trial National Championship automatically goes to Paris. So that's the only reason why I think that I'd be interested, because it's as you've learned probably through Katie in the Olympics with triathlon, the discretionary stuff is just really tough on the athletes and tough on anyone and tough to plan a season around. But if there's an automatic race and you're I'm either going to be there or not, the elite female winner of that race will go to Paris. So that's a extra added thing. But I don't want to take away from the triathlon, so I don't want to just get 10th in the time trial and potentially detract from triathlon.
So when you start this season, basically having surgery, right? January 3rd, you're having surgery. Thinking about racing, not knowing when you're going to race again. If someone told you back then, okay, you'll be doing Ironman at the end of the year, plus everything else that you did in terms of qualifying or getting fourth at the time trial championship and getting qualifying for your second Olympic team, you would have said what?
Well, I think the nice thing, so going into surgery was, and I decided to have surgery for August 17th. That was the whole reason why I made that decision. And I actually, I started feeling stuff in my foot and I flew home. Like I left my family Christmas in Florida and my mom was very upset with me. I missed a family wedding. Like it wasn't like I kind of knew I needed to get it done.
Right.
And it's easier said than done now because it's like, well, I got the surgery, it went successful and I had a good season. And I'm sure but that's kind of, it's my job. It's what I have to do. And so, it was definitely tougher when it was still uncertain. But there was a lot of it was kind of a weight off my shoulders because it's like, I just need to be back by August 17th. That's the first date that it matters. And so anything before then was such a bonus because I'm like, I was racing in Yokohama in May and I'm like, I should not be here. Like this, I'm here, but I shouldn't. So I was very grateful for how the process went.
So when it was first diagnosed, it was a stress reaction and it wasn't considered serious at all, right? It was like, oh, you can keep running on it or
no. So it was first diagnosed as a stress reaction and the doctor said it would be like 2 to 6 weeks to heal.
Okay.
And it was like a very minor edema. And the physical therapist I was working with he's like, it's not going to be less than 8. And I'm like, well, I'm going to prove you wrong. It's going to be less than 8. It was. And then at the 11-week mark, that was last summer or summer 2022. So at the 11-week mark, I got a second opinion. I went to a surgeon and he's like, well, actually, this edema is so minor that I wouldn't have stopped you from running at all. But
God.
he was like, you know what? At this point, you need to start running because either it's all good or it's not healed and you'll have to have a screw put in. So I didn't hear the second part. So I started running again. The fall happened. I had a good season in the fall. And it was only when I started taking a break that I felt the injury was still there. So then I was like, okay, I need to do something. I probably need a screw put in. So.
And I mean, it's not like the simplest thing in the world. You put a screw in and you're hoping it works. But were they pretty confident that, okay, this is going to cure this?
Yes. Because and the screw is very the decision for the screw, there were 3 different factors, like the length, because the screw can bend and so you don't want it too long. It's headed because you want that turnover of the bone to help with the healing process. And then it's threaded for the healing process and then it's headed so it can be taken out. So it's in there forever, but it can be taken out at any point if it starts to bother me.
So when this January 3rd, and what could you do? Could you swim? Could you ride? You obviously can't run. Is it mainly just strength work?
Well, yeah. So for the first 4 weeks after surgery, I couldn't do anything because of the incision. So, and that also because of where the incision is, it's a direct line to bones. So I was told, you know what, if this gets infected, you're out for 6 months to a year. So you got to be smart. So the first 4 weeks, I did absolutely nothing. Actually, I went in the sauna because at the 3-week mark, I had to sweat out my what's the anesthesia. So right. I did go in the sauna. That was it, though. So someone asked me recently, how did you get through January? And I'm like, I do not know, but I wasn't fun to be around. And then February, I got to start swimming and riding again. But then I hadn't done anything for 6 to 8 weeks because it was right after off season that I got surgery. So I had my off season, then came back. So then it's well, now you have to build up because you need to regain the strength to not get injured again. So, and then I started running at the 12-week mark. So that was only 6 weeks prior to Yokohama.
And when you were dealing with what you thought was a stress reaction and you came back, you win. I mean, you raced Dallas, Cagliari, 70.3 Worlds, Bermuda, Abu Dhabi. Did you feel it? Did you feel that it wasn't quite right?
No, but I think actually what saved me was, so number one, so first off, I was building up from having not run. So it wasn't like I was running crazy amounts.
Right.
Like Dallas was my first continuous run. I had been doing walk runs to that point. And actually that Dallas we can count as another walk run because I did walk in that race as well. But
but you still got second.
But I think it also like it's a great lesson for me and for like anyone else in terms of like how much your swim and bike fitness can carry over and how like that fall for me is showing like how valuable just being fit is. But then actually I broke my other toe in Bermuda in transition. So it was my proximal phalanx of my right foot. So then I didn't run in between Bermuda and Abu Dhabi. And since it was just 3 weeks, it was like I had the confidence from the summer knowing how I felt running first after not running for 11 weeks. I'm like, well, 3 weeks is good. I can maintain the fitness. It's all good. Like, but that probably saved my left foot because like if I had been, who knows, like 2 weeks in, I could have started feeling the left foot if I had been running on both feet. So I don't know, like it all worked out in a very strange way. I ended the year with 2 broken toes. It's not great. So
now you said you're switching coaches. Who are you working with now?
Well, so I want to keep that a little bit private for now. We don't want to make a formal announcement, but I'm excited and very grateful. So
very cool. Good for you. So this season, obviously all the Olympics, that's number one. Will you try to, for 70.3 Worlds, which next year in New Zealand, do you have to qualify for that, or as defending champion, do you get to go?
I have to validate technically. So, but again, Ironman in their rules has the asterisk of if you win in Paris, which that's a tough ask. Or number 2, they reserve the right to have wild cards. So I don't know just because of the year. But I'm very fortunate that there's Boulder 70.3 in
your backyard,
4 miles away from where I live.
Yeah.
So yes, but so I should probably validate.
So when we look at the U.S. women, it's fascinating to me because you're playing in so many different arenas. You're playing in the 70.3 arena. You're obviously world triathlon with the Olympics, and then you got Ironman. You're racing all these amazing women at all these different distances, which I know you love. You love competition, right? And it's funny because when I was reading you talking about competition, how cool it is to go against. Training is great, but it's all about racing, right? Racing is what sort of stirs everything. And my magazine was called Competitor Magazine, as I love that the brand and what competitor stands for. You got to race against everybody from Daniela Reef to Ashley Gentle, to Annie Hogg and to Lucy Charles. Nobody has had a better competitive year than you have, racing against all these amazing women. When you look at it, what do you like most about racing, just about racing itself?
Well, I think racing brings the best out of everyone. And when you're up against the best women in the sport, there's nowhere to hide. And so I think that kind of trickles down in terms of like, okay, not only on race day, do you have to bring your best self, but in the preparation for that race, like you need to bring your best self. And then throughout that process, like the learning, but also on race day, seeing Anne run by me is like, I'm sorry, but that's just inspiring because I'm like, you are not running that fast. Like, it's just shocking. But it's like, it's seeing how, like, I love doing things that I've never done before. I love improving. I love being a better version of myself. And I think that like a healthy dose of fear and like uncertainty, I think is it's healthy. But it also gets the best out of me. And so, and also like trying different things. It's just like, after 70.3 Worlds, like going into my Kona block, which people would probably debate if they saw it, if that really counts as an Ironman training block. I loved it. Like it was just different. And it was something that I hadn't done before. And I was learning things about myself. I think that like, I always said you can't hide in the 70.3, but I think you can hide a little bit in the 7.3 with the nutrition aspect. And then just learning so much more in the Ironman block. I'm like, wow, and then hopefully I can bring that back to short course. So I think it's more like layering on and learning for me. But then also just getting to race the best women in the world right now.
Yeah. Well, and I think, like you said, you like doing new things, and I think you like surprising maybe yourself, but also the rest of us. When you go to Collins Cup and you're riding just a road bike, and everybody's on a TT bike, and she can't do this, and you end up having the fastest split of the day and blowing everybody away. And then you go to Kona with I was there when Luke van Leerde came over, and he'd never run a marathon, he'd never done an Ironman, and the guy breaks a course record by like 5 minutes. And is it something inside of you that you say, hey, I just want to try new stuff. I want to do things where people think I can't have success, and show them that I can?
Oh, I don't think it's about proving anything. I mean, at the end of the day, I was not like that Collins Cup thing. I think it was Mark Matthews, when I was maybe a kilometer from the finish, yelled at me like, "You have the fastest women's split of the day." And I'm like, yeah, that's just because women haven't gotten to the time split yet. Like, that was not the plan in any way, shape, or form. I think at the end of the day, like, I really love racing. I really love kind of testing myself, and probably a little bit too much. So if I have the race, it puts a bit of a, like, I don't know, like a safety net on me. I'm almost a dog who always needs to be leashed a lot because I just enjoy it so much. And then knowing there's a race, it's like, okay, you can't like save it for the race and do it in the race. And you can like, and the worst thing is you fall apart. Like, at the end of the day, the sun still sets. Like, it's kind of like on the Queen K, when I was walking and Laura had passed me. It was 3K to go. And I was like, okay, I think I have 6 minutes on Daniela. That means I can't go slower than 2 minutes per K, or like than her. And let's say she's running 4 minutes per K. I need to keep 6. Like, that scared me. And I kind of like that, because it's like trying to like solving problems in the moment is
Right.
just fun, because you don't know how your body's going to react until you're in those situations, or your mind.
Well, and I'm looking at those last number of miles out there in the Queen K. It's like 18 mile, 8:52, then 21:4, 7:38, 8:13, 9:02. I mean, you were going through hell out there for that last 10K. But they always talk about that. In Kona, it's all about that last 10K is where the wheels can really come off.
Oh yeah, well, and the wheels came off, and then I think it was even worse post race. But the fun thing is that, like, you just don't know until you'll do it, and then you do it, and then that's just like the first mark on the board, and then, okay, how do I get a little bit better from that, and just you go from there. Like, that's what I like, but you don't know what you're capable of until you try it.
So for Paris, you were, I think, like 23rd or something off the bike. That correct? Something in that ballpark. You were not, because when we're talking longer distance, you're always right there at the tippy end of it. So you're 23rd. Of course, these are huge packs as well. But 23rd off the bike, I think you had like one of the fastest runs of the day, and ran your way up and got 5th place and qualified to go to Paris. Were you counting as you were running, going, okay, I got to get top 8? Is that what you needed to do to get to firm up Paris?
Yeah, well, so 23rd off the bike, I even had no idea on that. It was just, that's poor positioning, but I was in the lead pack. And then I had a horrible transition. That's something I need to work on. And I think that probably actually saved me in a bit, because then I could pace the run on my own. And then like, I didn't catch very many people the first lap, and then I started catching a lot more people the second lap. And then the third lap, it was just kind of like, I knew I was good, or as long as I kept it up. Because at the end of the day, like, although you had to be top American in the top 8, or if one American was on the podium, then the second American in the top 8 also qualified. And so it was really just about, like, it's a race within the race. And it's like, it can be, people can go out and be a bit feisty. And so, like, I was just back and I was way out of it. So then I just ran my run, and I'd be interested to see kind of the breakdown of the splits, because, like, I think it probably helped me in the end have the split I did. But yeah, I think I had the 3rd fastest run. I was a few seconds off the podium. So
yes,
it is what it is.
So when I look at the U.S. potential Olympians, right? There's obviously yourself, there's Taylor Spivey, there's Summer Rappaport, there's Christian Casper, there's Katie Zafaris, there's Gwen Jorgensen is still out there. Between the U.S. and U.K., don't you think women have the strongest group? And now the French, oh my God, we've got so many great athletes coming up. And I think after, now you're talking potentially 2028 as well for Olympics, but I think a lot of the women after next year will be moving up into 70.3, into PTO, into Ironman. Who do you think transfers well? Who do you think from these amazing women who are in World Tri, when they step up, are going to do really, really well at the longer distance?
Well, actually, my first answer is someone who's younger than me. And so I think she's probably going to be around short course racing for a while, but Kate Waugh, she has a super strong swim. Her bike, like within the Paris bike pack, I was near the front, and it was probably Taylor Spivey, Kate, I want to say Lena Meisner, but I might be getting that wrong. We were the four taking pulse. That's it. And Kate was leading the charge in a lot of ways. And I think she got 7th in the test event. But then she continued to have a great season after that. And so I think that like the best is only going to come for her. And so I think she would translate very, very well. But then you have Katie. I mean, she's a super strong cyclist. I can see that. And then like, I'm trying to think. Yeah, like I think at the end of the day, you have to want it. And that's you have to want to make the transition and want to do that kind of training. And so I don't know how, like it could be a complete surprise, but it depends. And then there's also Julie Duran, who I think is a dark horse for medaling in Paris based on Brett Sutton. I feel like he always has someone who kind of like is just right there. And she had a big run injury, I think. And then, but if she goes to long course, it'll be very good as well. But I could see her on the podium next summer in Paris.
And the fact that Ironman World Championship this year was all women in Kona, and will be all women in Nice next year. Nice has 8,000 feet of climbing. You're someone who likes to climb. That would be a pretty awesome course for you to go to. But Kona you'd been there before with your mom because you'd raced there. What was when you looked at it from the athlete perspective, did anything surprise you? Like you mentioned the week before, it's just, there's something special about that island.
Oh yeah. I think there's stuff, as you said, there's something very special, and it's hard to kind of put into words, but just in terms of the energy, and I think also like the history. And like I was riding my bike the first day, and it was so windy. Oh, and but it was like it's been a similar course for that long, and so you kind of know like, wow, like this is probably something that someone else has experienced, when that's hard to come by in any sport, I think.
Yes.
But it's just, there are some things that you can't escape, and maybe that's what makes it so special. But I think also the energy of everyone there racing, it's an important race on everyone's calendar. And like, it's not a B race for anyone. Like everyone's there it kind of like the Olympics, like
right.
If anyone, like everyone cares about it, which brings the best out of them. And then there are also just so many people in the industry, and getting to see so many different people. That's also, and I, compared to you, I don't have that many relationships. I'm sure for you, it's like this huge reunion week. And that's fun. Really special, where like everyone in the sport gets to gather in one location. You can see so many people who you might just see once a year.
What's going from, because you were doing the Olympic format for so long, going back to juniors and under 23, when you first jumped into longer distance, did you like it right away? Was it different? Did you feel like it was that much different, or is racing?
Well, actually, like I've always been intrigued by like long course. And so every year that like Boulder 7.3, I trained in Boulder a little bit in 2017, and then a little bit more in 2018 and 2019. And I remember those race weekends when it was Boulder 7.3 was happening in 2018 and 2019, and I just wanted to race, but I couldn't race that year.
Right.
But then, so when I did it, it was more like just to scratch an itch in like, because when I'm intrigued by something, I kind of want to do it to see like, is this worth wasting any mental energy over? Thing and saying like, oh no, you can't. Sometimes I think it's just better to do it and be like, well, yeah, it's not worth it. Like I like what I have. And that's what I was kind of, that's why I did my first 70.3. Because it was kind of like, okay, like, and severely undertrained, like was not ready. And then it was my strength coach convinced me to go to the Collins Cup. I was planning to say no to the Collins Cup, like, and then she convinced me. She's like, "Come on, Taylor, it's really good for the sport. Like, you should do this. Like, if not for you, just because it's like the inaugural race, and just like you don't have to do anything special. Just like show up and have fun and experience it and meet the other pros." Like, at the time I was 23. I think
Yes.
one of the benefits of these kind of races is learning from the other pros. Because there's no rule book. There's no, like, there aren't a lot of people who do this. And so kind of like just seeing how they conduct themselves and behave and plan their weeks and get the best out of themselves, I think is fascinating. And so then I went to the Collins Cup, and then when I raced full in the Collins Cup, then it was only then did I decide to do 7.3 worlds. And then that kind of opened up the can of worms that's become what it is today. But that's another story.
So 70.3 worlds, this one, when you win that in Finland, was the plan even at that point that you were going to do Kona, or was it sort of dependent on how things went at 70.3 worlds?
No, it was all kind of dependent on if I qualified for Paris and Paris.
Got it.
And so because we didn't have to validate, and I was just interested. And also I think that like the Olympics, it's a very closed circuit. Like you go to a WTS race and it's just this, it's the same people, just in a different city.
Right.
And it, with the Olympic qualification, like just tensions build, and there's a lot of energy. It's just a lot. And so in terms of my aim is to be the best prepared I can be for July 31st. So once I qualified, it's like, I don't need to go to Ponte Vedra. I don't need to take 3 flights, go across that many time zones. It's a direct flight to Kona. It's that. And then Kona also afforded me, I think one of the things that overwhelmed me a bit with Tokyo was just the amount of attention on the event. Like at the end of the season, for example, in 2021, I was like, I forget where I was, but someone, like one of my parents' neighbors, was like, you were 16th at the Olympics. I'm like, yeah, thanks for reminding me, because like I raced 8 other times, and those were all better races, but you watched one. And that was kind of, and so just learning how to manage that. And so like having a media schedule, you were one of the few people who I said yes to. I was working on saying no.
Thank you.
And so learning how to handle that to prepare me, and also not having, so it was a number of like doing your first Ironman, it was fun. But trying to be the best prepared I can for Paris. Like people might not see that, but I think it's the like intangibles that you don't get practice with a lot. But
so during the bike, you had your water bottles flying all over the place. What the hell? What was going on? Were you trying to? My thought was, okay, she doesn't usually have bottles back there, so this is sort of a new thing. What actually was happening?
Well, yeah. So I didn't. So I had practiced with the bottles, but I'm realizing. So I was staying out in the Monolani.
Yep.
And so I was doing kind of the section of the Queen K mostly that's nicer paved. So I wasn't doing the town section, and I was not doing up to Hobby that much. I had already done that. And so like by the time I had that cage put on my bike, it was just like very smooth, flat roads. But I quickly learned via town and then the descent from Hobby, where I kept putting it back in because it would just like jump out a little bit. Yeah, that it was, any bump would just like rattle it, which isn't the thing. And I didn't have enough room to like stuff it anywhere. So it was just, it was unfortunate. I think it is what it is. I was grateful that I got 1 penalty and not 3. But it was also like in terms of, yeah, it was what it was. And I was grateful that I had a lot of backup stuff on my bike. So I think I was okay, but like it was just more like so I think it was right after I passed Lauren Brandon. So I don't even know, maybe like 12 miles into the bike.
Yeah.
I like look back to see if she's like her shadow, and I see my shadow and I see no bottles. Like, so I'm like, oh God, oh goodness, this is going to be a long day. But
that's when Jan Frodeno came there for the first time. I think he got a penalty, and then he came in the transition off the bike and realized he didn't change. So he had to run back in and change into his running stuff. I mean, it's not first time you're there, stuff happens. It's comes with the territory. But looking back afterwards, how long did it take you to feel like, okay, my legs feel okay again. I can run, I can do things again? Or was it pretty much I'm just taking the next month and doing nothing?
Well, so I went home. I flew back from Hawaii to Denver. I went home for 25 minutes, I think it was, because I needed to change out my clothes. I landed in Denver at like 6:25 a.m. and I had a 10:13 flight out to Madison, Wisconsin. So I went home to Boulder, which isn't close, and drove back to the airport. I made sure I only had carry on so I didn't have to check any bags. And then I went to Trek team camp. So like it's cyclists in their off season. I soon learned what that means. And so I can tell you that I was not walking well the first day. By Thursday, so what, 5 days after the race, I was still a little sore walking upstairs, but Friday it had completely broken. So like by 6 days, I felt like I was good, but I still wasn't doing much.
So when you went to the national time trial, got fourth there, you're 35 seconds back to Chloe, and she's just won the UCI World Champs time trial. So that's got to make you feel like, oh, I'm right there.
Well, yes and no, because Chloe, like, I don't know if I don't know if she was second or third. Like, I don't know if she just did enough to check off the box. And then the woman who was second, I think got like 24th at Worlds. And Amber Neben, who's incredible, she was 8th at Worlds, but she was also sick at Worlds. So it just, I think you can never say something like that, but it's also, I knew my race, it's about me getting better if I want to continue it. And I know there's a lot of low hanging fruit.
When you're training for for a time trial, that's basically perfect for a long distance triathlon, right? So they complement each other. Don't you think they complement each other or not really?
Well, no, actually, I think that so if I want to take it seriously,
yes,
I'm going to have to get a different position for the time trial than my triathlon. Like right now, I'm just riding the same position, which I don't think is optimized for either. And time trial, you can have a bit tighter hip angle because you're not running off of it.
Right.
So I need to do that. I just didn't have the time this year, and just like all the specifics, like, so I don't know if these numbers are right, but at Trek we were told that certain what are the shoe covers?
Yes.
Can save between 5 and 15 watts, which, I mean, if they're saving 15 watts, I'm putting them on for an Ironman.
Of course.
But that might not be accurate. So, and I also asked about the equipment, if it's wet, how that changes, and they couldn't answer that. And the time trial in Knoxville was in the rain. So aerodynamics might go out the window in the rain or just be different. But yeah, so I need to get a different position. But so in Paris, the time trial is 32.4 kilometers. It actually starts and finishes right where the triathlon starts and finishes.
That's fun.
Ironically, it's 4 days before though. And so it's actually it's probably a similar effort and energy system to triathlon, the Olympic distance. So it's just a different bike and position, but similar training for that. So it might work, might not.
So in the midst of all this other stuff, you also went to Milwaukee and won PTO, won the US Open. That's pretty fun.
Well, so Milwaukee was like, that was a fun weekend for me. I got to have dinner with my first triathlon coach because youth and junior nationals were there, as well as age group nationals. So it was just like, it was very fun. And I raced in Milwaukee as an age grouper in 2013, 2014, and 2015. I always did the sprint. So it was like, it was just fun. And I think that I'm glad that the PTO and USA Triathlon merged the two events. It was a very fun weekend.
And dealing with the different pro women that you've dealt with in everything from cycling to long to short distance, do you find that all of the women that you've been dealing with are supportive of each other? Do you like racing longer distance more than shorter distance, or cycling more than triathlon? What have you found in terms of just people being welcoming?
Well, would you like the honest answer?
Yeah.
Well, so when I went to the cycling time trial, now it was in Knoxville and it was pouring rain, can't see. So, but it just seemed like no one really wanted to be there. And it's also tough because like some women in the pro tour race 58 days of the year. So like, I think I raced 9 days this year. Like that's very different when it's one of your 9 days versus one of your 58. And it's also for me, it was something new. So I think it's just like a different world in cycling, right. And I don't know it fully yet. I got to go to the track camp. I got to meet the whole team. They're very nice women. It's a very great program. So I don't think that one experience, it could just be a one-off, and it could also be in the United States and the weather influences it. And then the short course, it's also tough because, I mean, in terms of the American women, like, there are 3 Olympic spots, and there are probably 7 to 9 women who are very deserving. And so then it's also like, then it's tough because, but also if you're doing the relay, then all of a sudden you're on the team with someone else who, like, you're sharing a goal, but the rest of the year you're trying to race against them. And then long course is just different because you're coming from different positions, but like, some people came from short course, and so it's a new thing. Some people, like, that's how they just went straight into long course. So I just think it depends on the race. It depends on the person. And, like, also for me, like, as a 25-year-old, I do sometimes feel that probably more than anything, because sometimes they're like, oh, you're so young. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Like,
you've been in this sport for a long time.
Yeah, that's how it feels. But then when you think about some, like, Anne Haug is 40. So it's like, okay, that's a different era. But it's just, like, for the most part, like, I have the utmost respect for every woman I race, because, like, I kind of know what I have to do to get to the start line and the finish line. And so you know that everyone else is going through that in just their own way.
What I love this year is, interviewing Annie and interviewing Lisa Norden and Daniela Reef, and knowing all 3 of them raced in the 2012 Olympics, right? They're all in the Olympics together, and seriously, over a decade later, they're still at the top of the game, which shows at 25 years old, we're talking 15 more years of this, Taylor.
I don't know, but I think, like, as a career progresses, it's just different. And you kind of have to race for different reasons, and you have to figure out, like, why you continue. Like, it's like it shifts. And, like, I look at Gwen, and I feel like she took a 7-year hiatus from the sport, and then it appears as though she's having a fantastic time again from a sport that she left because she wasn't. So it's also like, that's pretty special, and that the sport, you can take a break if you need to.
Well, and you've seen it, like your mom, she still loves this, right? I know she didn't have a great race in Kona this year, but this is her, that's her happy place, right? Being in a race, being in a transition area, early in the morning. I was chatting with her in St. George last year, and it's dark 30, and we're both used to being there. Even though she wasn't racing, I wasn't racing. It was just one of those things where she just, that's our life. And you have seen how much she loves it, and obviously you love it just as much.
Yeah, I think, like, we probably love it for different reasons. I don't know all, like, why she loves it or all why I love it. I think I'm still learning. But yeah, it's a very special sport. It's a special community, and I love that it's still in its infancy in a lot of ways. And it's just kind of, the question is kind of, where will it go? And that's part of the fun of it, but also, where will it go? But hopefully maintaining the history and kind of respect for all that's come before, like a place like Kona. And that's where it's fun. Like, I get to go somewhere like the PTO, where this is a totally new place, and race the 100K distance. And then you get to go to Kona, where, like, that's where the legends of the sport and everyone who I've looked up race. So it's just, like, all in a year. So
yeah, no, the variety of stuff you did this year coming off of surgery is pretty amazing. You were very, very special. Hey, Taylor, thanks so much for taking time. Always such a treat to get to chat with you. And thank you for including me in a small group that you chatted with before Kona. It's always such a pleasure to catch up with you. I love the enthusiasm you bring to the sport. And I love your love of the history and the traditions, what make our sport very, very special, especially going in our 50th anniversary, right? 50th anniversary of triathlon this year.
Wow. Well, that means a lot coming from you, because you bring a lot of enthusiasm, and you know the history of this sport better than anyone. So thank you for all you do for the sport.
And having someone like yourself coming in who started in juniors and went through the whole process, and is still out there just expanding your horizons every day, going, oh, Ironman, I'll give that a shot. Not being afraid of the moment, not being afraid of the distance, not being afraid of anything. That's one of the things Mark Allen, when I was chatting, I said, give me one word for Taylor. He goes, fearless. That's to me, that sums up Taylor Knibb more than anything.
Well, then you shouldn't ask how I felt immediately after the practice swim, because that was just fearful. Like,
because you had your goggles on like you were doing an ITU race, right? You had them like sucking out the eyeballs from your head. When you're 200 yards into the swim and your eyes are going, what's going on here?
Oh, but it's so long, but it's also, I think it was a great reminder for the race. Like, it was just, then the race felt shorter.
And you wanted to use a snorkel. That's always good.
Well, it's also so pretty in Hawaii. So it's also like, it's a gorgeous place, and it's a special place, but.
Love it. Taylor, and what's the rest of the off season? Will you a lot of training, or is just more just focusing on specific weight training goals? What happens now?
Well, actually, so I just finished like my 3-week, it was actually, I guess, 22-day break, where I kind of got to do whatever I wanted to do with parameters, though, because that's the danger with me. I might go off a little and do too much. So I had like caps more than anything. And then today's my first official day back training. It's a recovery day, so it's kind of ironic, but I'm very excited. And so then it'll hopefully be like, I'm hoping to get a really good chunk of time and start building for next year. But we'll see.
Love it. Taylor Knibb has been our guest. Such a rising star in our sport. Just love everything you bring to the table, Taylor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bob.
Taylor Knibb again has been our guest. Thanks for everybody for tuning in, and we will catch you next time. See ya.